Amount of attention on the internets for some odd projects, but the PC company John Bach started in his garage back in 2000 is mostly about building quality machines one at a time. John's been keeping track of the parts that fail and the parts that last. There is some interesting info in there, folks. John, welcome to TechZilla.
Great, yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. What's new up at Puget Systems these days?
Oh, well, it's really an exciting time. It's been a great 6 months. We have Core i5, Core i3 now. The new ATI cards, and looking forward to Intel Fermi. Really amazing jumps in performance and a lot of new products coming out the last few months.
Are people still buying Core 2 Duos, or are they all pretty much moved up to the Core i5?
Yep, Core 2 Duos are all gone. I was surprised to see how fast they went, but we dropped the last motherboard from our line here recently.
Wow.
And yeah, it's all Core i5, Core i3.
We should probably start out. What single component? You guys basically, you get the RMAs, you get the service requests. What single component fails most often on PCs?
It's heartbreaking to say, but it's the motherboard. It's the most frustrating part of your computer to have fail. Where we see almost double the failure rate than we see in any other category. And I should qualify that when I talk about a failure, I'm talking about anything right. Gone wrong. And I mean, it's valid to do that, but I think it's also valid to realize that if you were to be building your own computer at home and you realize that your COM port header on the motherboard doesn't work, you would just say, well, I don't use a COM port header and keep going. But as someone that builds these PCs, we can't. We have to treat any problem as a failure, and the motherboard just has more that can go wrong.
What kind of failure, when you say it's the component you see fail the most often, is it 5%, is it 20%, is it 2% of the machines that go out? Well,
on average it's about, I have the stats here in front of me, on average it's about 12%.
Wow.
But motherboard is also the most diverse of all the categories. We have some units that are 2%, and we have some that are 60% failure rate on a new motherboard. It's crazy. We see consistent failure rates across the different brands.
Really?
Where we see a lot of the differences is actually, well, first of all, the number of features on the motherboard. If you have, an Extreme Series motherboard that has, 20 USB ports, and it has every sort of little controller, RAID controller, and SAS controller on it, there are just more things to go wrong, and it seems natural that those would fail more often.
Would that happen to be Intel motherboards that have the 2% failure rate?
It seems to have a lot less to do with the brand. We don't see a lot of variation from brand, but more the chipset is actually a big deal. If you look at, I don't like slamming any companies, but maybe we'll do the inverse. We'll talk good. Intel chipsets is where we see a dramatically higher reliability. We're talking an order of magnitude of 4 times more reliable from Intel chipsets.
No kidding. So if motherboards are the most likely component to fail, what's the next most likely component to fail?
The next most likely for us, and this might be atypical, but it's video cards. And the reason I say it may be atypical is because specifically it's the high-end, high-power video cards that fail more often. I think they're pushing the hardware to a further extreme, and that just opens it up for problems.
So it's it's not like the giant heat sinks they attach to these or yanking them out of the slots so they're bouncing around inside the case. It's actually physical failures maybe due to heat on the GPU itself?
Yeah, well they're certainly more susceptible to shipping problems, but the vast majority of the failures that we find are failures in our shop during the burn-in process after we build the computer. What's
the most reliable thing? I mean, cases, are they the most reliable components? Or?
Right. Well, when I ran the stats, I deliberately pulled out things like cases. Keyboards are very reliable. Mm-hmm. But the one that I think is most important is CPUs.
Really?
CPUs, by far, are more reliable than anything else in your system.
Less than a 2% failure rate, a 1% failure rate, or?
It's a 0.9% overall.
Wow. So I guess we've kind of like taken care of all of the socket issues we had in the past and the...
Yeah. Well, some of them have. We do see a big spread. We see with Intel CPUs, we see a 0.6% overall failure rate, and with AMD, we still see a 1.9% failure rate. And for the most part, yeah, it's bent pins, that type of thing, where they're just more susceptible to that type of damage.
So how about one of the most problematic components for a lot of people, hard drives? Any stats particularly stand out on hard drives?
Hard drives are really boring. We see We see equal failure rates. The industry, or the average for us, is around 3%. And we see 3% from Western Digital, Samsung, Maxter, Seagate. Hitachi's a little bit higher, but we only used Hitachi for the really high-end drives, so that might be a thrown off. We see equal failure rates between solid states and traditional hard drives. They're all around 3%.
So basically, the industry, the hard drive industry, is pretty. Everybody's pretty equal at this point.
It's pretty standard, yeah. The only jump out that I saw was in the cheaper, the lower end solid state hard drives. I think those have already gotten a pretty bad rap in the industry of, well, those aren't the solid state drives you want. But just as reassurance of that, we measure a 15% failure rate on those hard drives.
How about power supply units?
Power supply is kind of in the middle. We see about a 6% failure rate. It's fairly standard across the different companies. We don't have actually a lot of experience with very many companies. We've worked with Intermax, Seasonic, and Corsair. Corsair is the lowest failure rate, but only when you factor in some bad manufacturing batches. We've had a couple instances where we've had huge batches, hundreds and hundreds of units that had a buzzing noise to them. So we consider those failed. That really bumps up the failure rates for Corsair. But it was a single isolated issue, and once you push that aside, they're the most reliable units we've seen.
I got to ask, because people are going to ask me if I don't, are there any brands you absolutely avoid when you're building a system? I understand if you can't answer that question, but are there certain like logos you see and like hives start popping up?
Yeah, there are a couple. I guess what my advice would be is the more hype you see and the more like extreme, or if they use the word fatality, or when that happens, you know that the marketing team has a bigger voice than the engineers, and you know something's wrong.
Oh my goodness. John, this is awesome information. Thank you so much for sharing this with the crew here at TechZilla. Ladies and gentlemen, PugentSystems.com is the website to build nice machines. I've seen them. Go check it out. John, thank you again for taking the time to talk to us today.
Well, thank you.
Squarespace.com, people. They've been a sponsor of TechZilla here for a while. They're a publishing system. You're looking to build a blog, portfolio, any kind of website, they're a really good place to go. Why? It's simple. It's painless, even for me. My wife actually mocks my terminal fail when it comes to building websites. She enjoys mocking me, but she also admired Squarespace's system. She actually used it to import her WordPress page without any pain, and she found that you can actually get a site up and running pretty quickly. No coding, the creation is fast, and there's a finite number of modules, which means you aren't spending forever searching through piles of weird little things that people have designed to run on some system. You know if they work, you know if they don't. You can check them quickly without spending a lot of time messing around. And now, I mentioned Squarespace, they have the site importer tool. It does work with WordPress, Blogger, Typebed, Movable Type. And it's really simple and really easy. Matter of fact, I'm actually using it to build my own website myself, which everybody can email in and mock me about once I have it up and running. It's really simple. Do us a favor. If you decide to use Squarespace to hold your website, use the code TechZilla. You'll actually get us credit, but more importantly, get you 10% off the lifetime of your order. Heads up, it's not going to happen on the initial tryout when you first go there, but a few days later, if you decide to purchase and stick with Squarespace, do us a favor when you make that order, use that TechZilla code. Again, they're one of our sponsors. We'd love it if you tried them out. Squarespace.com.